Hello, Get Better Faster Nation. I'm Dr. Jason Bradley, and along with my co host, the one, the only James Chester, and our incredible executive producer, Rachel Bradley, we want to welcome you to another exciting episode of the Get Better Faster podcast. Today, we're joined by a relationship expert who has spent nearly 30 years helping people understand why they do the things that they do. Dr. Denim Slade is one of the few PhD level coaches in the world who has developed a revolutionary approach to understanding personality and relationships. After more than 22 years as a licensed marriage and family therapist and over 10 years of education, Dr. Slade created the Core Temperament Assessment, an evidence-based personality profiling system that's helping thousands of people stop fighting who they are and start building lives that actually fit. In his best-selling book, Unlock Your Core Potential, it's changing the game for people who've been told they need to change who they are to be happy. Spoiler alert, you don't. Without further ado, Dr. Denim Slade, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here and looking forward to the conversation. And it's really good to see you again. So
good to see you too, man.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, behind the scenes, I got a chance to have some good laughs with you before we got this episode started. So it's really nice to get to know you too.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you.
So 22 years as a licensed therapist, yeah?
Yep. Yeah.
You took some deep dives and probably figured out a lot about human psychology and human temperament and assessing all that. Then you started to probably realize what couldn't be changed in somebody's framework of who they are. So you probably tried to focus on what could change.
Yes.
And as you did that work, when did you realize that you had some innate abilities to help people get better faster with helping them change what they can rather than what they can't?
Yeah. You know, when you're in the business of change, which is what you do in therapy, right? Understanding what is actually changeable and what isn't is super important. And temperament has been studied, and temperament's a little bit different than personality, right? Temperament has been studied for decades and has been shown to not change. An infant comes into life. There are 9 temperament variables that have been identified. An infant comes into life high or low on those 9 variables, and they don't change throughout life. And I had always been super interested in personality. It's one of the things that kind of drew me to this field 100 years ago. And as I worked with people day in and day out in my office, and I never had come across a model that was really consistent with what I saw day in and day out in my office, or the models were so kind of cumbersome and complicated, like the Enneagram, which is super awesome, but not super user friendly for about half the population. About 13, 14 years ago now, I decided to start collecting data on my own. I have a PhD. I know how to do research. And so I spent 3 years collecting qualitative data, and then, another year and a half to 2 years analyzing it. And then took me several years to get the book finally written and published. It turns out it's kind of hard to write a book, but it's as I delved into the research and I don't know how into this you want to get, but part of it was what was going on in my own personal life at the time too. As I kind of dived into trying to understand myself better in trying to work through some grief and different challenges that were going on in my life. I started seeing these patterns really clearly emerge and started seeing the impact for the lives of my clients and the people in my office. And I just felt like, one of the challenges with being a therapist or a coach is your work is really limited to one-on-one, and your impact is limited to hopefully helping change one life and one relationship at a time, which is awesome. But when you've got one at a time. And so I really felt passionately, and still do, about trying to get this information into more people's hands.
So when did you decide that there was the transition point to go from one to one to one to many?
During the research, as I as the model started coming together and I started analyzing the data and seeing these patterns, I started trying to figure out how to get this into more people's hands. And that was kind of the transition as I saw the change going on in my own life and in my own family. I mean, core has changed me and my family more than anybody else. Right. But as I saw that, I'm like, man, people have we got to get this word out. And that was kind of the transition point for me internally.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you shared there. I really appreciate that. And there's so much more. I'm sure Dr. Jason's over there thinking about how this could help transform him and his family too. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are listening. They're like saying, wow, this guy's really got to the core of how to make, of how,
you've been holding that.
make,
You've been waiting to say that. Like, I love it. Yeah, I'll jump right in here too. And first of all, Dr. Denim, thank you so much again for being on the show and sharing that. I think that, you know, our personal lives, this is just, you know, I've been in practice for 26 years, and you know, in the public, you know, sphere, so to speak. And I think that my personal life has definitely driven my own, I guess, interests in my practice, you know, with understanding autoimmunity and thyroid disorders and chronic illness and genetics and all that stuff, you know, because I plan on living forever, but, you know, I have to hack that stuff, you know, to do so. But it reminded me of a couple of interesting things. And this is what I wrote down. I said, trying to understand ourselves is the ultimate goal, right? I mean, I think for all of us. And it reminded me of a couple of quotes I just wanted to share that I think are pertinent. And then I'm going to jump right back in. Two of my favorite quotes about this, who looks outside dreams and who looks inside awakes, you know, and that's Carl Jung, which I love. I love Jungian psychology. And what's that called? Depth psychology. I just love that. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom by Lao Tzu. You know, so I love this. It's been around for a very long time, even from, you know, really old texts like Lao Tzu, but even into like modern depth psychology, like Jung, you know. So I love that. And I appreciate that. I do want to just, I'll tell you what, I'm chomping at the bit to talk about my core, what are they called? Primaries and secondaries, but I'm going to hold that card. I'm going to hold that card because if we jump in, no one's going to know what we're talking about. True. Can you give our listeners an overview of what the heck is core, CORE? Like what is it? And talk about these primaries and secondaries, like bring us all together.
Yeah. Let me kind of lay the framework briefly for all of my work. Really is based in two very important things. The first one is attachment theory, and I'll just the focus of this podcast isn't on that necessarily, but attachment theory is so imperative to understand, because it really lays the framework to help us understand how we at a very base level go about trying to monitor and manage closeness and connection in our lives. And attachment theory helps us understand that process. And most people have kind of a peripheral understanding of attachment theory, but not a real good knowledge. And I had the good fortune of, during my graduate work, of studying with one of the field's kind of founding experts and being mentored by her. I'm going to close my email. I think and then an attachment style is a blueprint that literally dictates how we monitor and manage closeness and connection in our lives. And most people are completely unaware of it. And so if you can understand that, and then if you can understand your core temperament, and temperament is the underlying reasons why we do the things that we do and why we don't do the things that we don't do. And there are four very clear, from my research, four very clear, which is core is an acronym. And we can dive into that in just a second, but there are four very clear motivations that most everybody has a pretty dominant primary type that we come into life with. And then most people have a pretty strong secondary type as well. And And I don't know if you want me to dive in,
Please. Yeah.
Jason, right now into James.
No, I'll wait till you finish this train of thought, but I do want to jump in and share a quick story.
You want to go ahead? My train of thought
Sure,
might be a minute.
sure. I was just down in Mexico City, and I met this retired airline pilot, and we were just talking about we were at a birthday party, and he was telling me that where he comes from, they have this special mezcal, and he likes to have a mezcal every once in a while. And he was just telling me how his favorite times of the day are when he wakes up in the morning. He likes to enjoy his coffee, and that's his lifestyle. And I was like, well, Jose, I don't drink alcohol, and I don't like I don't do caffeine anymore. And I was like, and I can appreciate that you enjoy those things, but and then I went on to tell him the other stuff I don't do. I'm like, I don't own a television. I don't, eat sugar. And then I realized, though, after I started telling him all these things, that sometimes we don't have to always be at a level 10. Sometimes we can just get by being at a level 2.
Yeah.
And everybody doesn't need to know like all of our character traits, like a checklist, like conversation that defines who we are. Sometimes it's okay to just say, hey man, I think it's great that you enjoy your coffee in the mornings, and every once in a while you enjoy a little mezcal, instead of me going all in and saying, dude, I don't eat sugar. I don't do this. I don't do this. No TV, no alcohol, and no caffeine. And I think, honestly, we had like an hour and a half conversation, but going to talk to somebody that I never met before, and his temperament was like, I just enjoy my time. I enjoy my life. But I was like, well, I do too. But it just gets me to a question. Do you find that some people have the temperament of being better quitters at things that don't serve them than other people can't stop doing things that don't serve them?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're getting and I can hear it in both of you, frankly, your E temperaments shining through, and those core E motivations. Do you want me to jump into that right now?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Or do you want me to back up and talk about temperament a little bit more?
I think if you could nail down temperament and then transition to this next part of the conversation.
Yeah. So there's a long debate in the field of human development and family science, psychology, of whether nature or nurture is more influential in development. And there's a lot of evidence, a lot of opinions in both camps. And of course the reality is that both nature and nurture do influence a lot, but temperament really gets at the nature side of us. Like I said, the research shows that people come into life, infants come into life with a temperament, and that innate part of us is unchangeable. And so many of us spend so much time and energy trying to change aspects of who we are that were never intended to be changed, that are not changeable, and that are not broken. And it's so different to learn how to work with who you are, who you unalterably are, than to try to change these aspects that are never going to change anyway. And then you have the nature side of the equation. And an infant is born with billions of neurons and very few neural pathways connecting those neurons together. And literally, how our brains get wired is a co-creative process that occurs between an infant and his caregivers. And that wiring then that our brains get wired with and in becomes this neurological filter that is between us and the outside world. And what I've seen, I've had the opportunity to work with multiple members of the same family across the years, and frequently I'll see different family members will have a different primary temperament, and then they'll share a secondary temperament. And so my model, my theory here is really it's a temperament model of personality, and incorporates both nature and nurture, and that combination between the unalterable parts of us, and then how our brains get wired. And because on the attachment side of the equation, on the nature side of the equation, about 80% of the brain gets wired by age 3, and about 90% of the brain gets wired by age 5. And most people's, in fact, I'll ask you guys, what's your first earliest memory? How old?
It's interesting. I it's a great question. I don't know, but let me explain why I don't know. It's fuzzy because I have some memories, but I think they might be from old, like,
Pictures or
8 millimeter video.
yes,
That I mean, do I remember it, or do I just know that I saw the video?
right.
I do remember, boy, and I don't want to open up a can of worms here. I do remember uh some stuff from kindergarten,
Okay.
maybe even some stuff from like a preschool, maybe like a 4-year-old,
4 or 5.
4 or 5, yeah, right
Yeah.
around there. Yeah, that's probably my
Yeah.
earliest memories. Yeah.
Yeah. James?
I mean, I remember tons of stuff. As Jason was talking, I just went back through like flipping the page book of life, and I remember, sticking up for my brother at a young age. And I
What's young
remember
age? How old?
before I was in school.
4?
Yeah. I remember being with the family animals, like the dogs. I remember loving to be outside and feeling the warmth of the sunshine on like the wet pavement in the summertime.
That's a nice image.
That's a beautiful
Um,
image.
It is a beautiful image. And that's but your point is accurate. Most people's first earliest memory is somewhere between 3 and 5. And so if you think about what that means that before you have any conscious memory, somewhere between 80 to 90% of your brain was wired, which means that we don't have any conscious memory of a time when our brains weren't wired the way that they've been wired.
Mm.
And
That's super
that's
interesting.
yeah, that's that nature side of things. And
Can I go a layer deeper with you?
yeah, vámonos.
In utero, how much of this wiring happens as we're being carried around by our mothers?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, there's some attachment literature. It's pretty hard to assess a lot of that, but there is research that shows that, I mean, our brains do and again, that's co-creative, right? That's those interactions that are going on.
Nature and nurture, though, right?
Exactly. Yep.
It's not versus each other. It's a commingling of both of those ideas, and
exactly,
because it always became nature versus nurture type of idea. But really,
and it's nature
and I think it's more of epigenetics. I think it's more of our environment, and I think it's more of how where the environment we were brought into the world, who the parents that we were brought into the world by, their belief systems, their temperaments, their behaviors, their either addictions or lack of addictions, and their beliefs in religions, their beliefs in education, their beliefs in what's good and what's bad, what's good, what's evil. So I think a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, really, you say it's right. Like, it shapes us by the time that we're even in the conveyor belt education model.
Totally. And then but you have that filtered through your temperament, which is very different. So an E is going to respond differently to those epigenetic forces than a C is going to respond to.
Wow.
Or an O or an R.
It's like, Rachel and I'm a primary E and Rachel's a primary C. 42% E for me, 44% C for Rachel.
Yeah, which is a pretty good combination, by the way, Jason.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I knew there was some magic there. I'll keep her.
Yeah. Well, and one of the coolest things about temperament and about my research is that there's a very predictable combination of strengths and challenges that come with each temperament, and they're not going anywhere. I've been married. We just had our 31st wedding anniversary on the 27th of December. Thanks. And I actually met my wife when I was 13. We didn't start dating until after that, but I've known her for a really long time. And the very same things that attracted me to her and that I love and valued about her then are the same things that I do now. And the very same things that that bothered me and that were difficult for me
Mm,
are the very same things that bug me today.
mm.
And vice versa, because those things are temperamentally based and do not go anywhere. You can change your behavior, you can change the way you interpret things, but you cannot change the underlying reasons why you do what you do as it relates to temperament.
I think that's fascinating. James, I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead. I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, it just takes me back to like being, once again, I'm not going to share level 10. I'm going to share level 2. 7 years of sobriety. Like if I still go out to like a bar, I'm not going to have alcohol, but I'm still the most chatty, most, charismatic person in that damn room.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna like interact with people and make them have the night of their life just because that's always been my character. And I grew up in a bar, and I grew up, around that type of like pub atmosphere. So it's just a part of me, whether people like loathe it or love it. Like that's just who I will always be at the core of myself.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the thing that people have to really come to terms with, who they are, like energetically as a personality. They have
Yeah.
to really come to terms with, I just like to be around people and have fun and see them laugh and have them like enjoy having somebody that's interested in them and finds ways to make them, have memorable times.
Can,
And I think that that's what friendship, the core to me is just having great friendship with people.
can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Do you do that because you think that that is kind of the right way to be, the right way to show up, and the right way to interact with people? Or do you do that um, because you want to have a good time? Is that motivated by wanting this kind of pleasant emotional environment, or is that motivated by like that's the right way to show up, that's the right way to be, it's the right way to interact?
It makes me feel like I'm connected. Like connection is one of my highest life values. So I just like to be connected to other people that are in the same environment with me.
Yeah. And that, because that's a really good example of you can have the same behavior being fueled for very different motivations.
Well, that's why I love being a podcast host, because I get a chance to have ultimate connection.
Yeah.
I can hold space for people. I can find the best topics inside of them and with me. And we can have like a barbershop conversation where you get a chance to talk about your genius, but also I can commingle in it with my level of, aptitude for the topics.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the thing I love most about this platform of the conversation of podcasting is I get to share space with a brilliant man, Dr. Jason Bradley, and we can hold space for just dynamic influencers in this health and wellness world that are doing something that makes people's lives better.
That's
And
cool.
I think that that's really my like chutzpah moment is
Yeah.
I get a chance to be in union with people that have credibility in this world, and I can help feature them to shine a big spotlight on them where their genius goes out to the masses, which maybe they don't get that opportunity from another host. Maybe they
Yeah.
don't get that opportunity from another platform. But I know when Jason and I do what we do, they're going to get that.
Yeah. That's cool.
I really appreciate that, James. Thank you for sharing that. And then also, I've known James and I have known each other for a long time. I can't remember if we said that in the green room or if we were on air when we did that. But one of the coolest things, I mean, James talked about connection with him, and what's really cool about that is that it's not just transient connection. I mean, he makes deep connections that last decades. I mean, the people that I've met through James, they've known him forever, and I've known James forever, and he's like one of the most consistent people that I know. I mean, in that, I think in the business world, it might be called networking, but it's not superficial networking. It's like actually caring about people and contributing to their lives as well. And and does he do it because it's the right thing to do? Does he do it because he gets something out of it? I don't know, but it's whatever he's doing. I mean, it's serving him well, and
It's innate, brother.
Yeah, you can
It's
feel it.
serving the world well. Yeah.
I learned it when I was a little boy. I learned it from watching old drunk people hang out at the bar.
Or maybe it came with you into life.
Yeah, yeah. Like, but I saw these things happening, and really, I think Jason was saying some quotes earlier. Do you know the work of John D. Martini?
I don't.
He's a brilliant man. He's read more books than anybody else that's alive right now. And he's one of my mentors. But he would always tell me, before James, I was Jim. You asked me like early memories. At 5 years old, they asked me what I wanted to be called. Do I want to be called Jim, Jimmy, or James? And I was like, I'll be Jim. So for 40 plus years of my life, I went by Jim. Now I go back to James. But John would tell me, he's like, maximum evolution happens at the borders of chaos and challenge, or chaos and the chaos and challenge and support. Hold on. Maximum evolution happens at the borders of chaos and order and support and challenge. And when I think about that, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
We are the maximum evolution at support and chaos and challenge and evolution of where we come to that moment is how we actually either go down a pathway of more support or more chaos.
Yeah.
And when you think about human psychology, which, you know, you're talking about, it really inspires me to like have these conversations because I know that we're just getting started. And as Jason will tell you, probably in the next, hour, we're going to go have part 2 with you because I think there's just so much that we're going to like uncover during today's conversation. That's just going to feel like we're touching the topic.
You might be totally bored in 15 minutes and
I'll be
short.
Also, I just want to say for those of us that have like programming that's hard to break, I met James as Jim and I still call him Jim. And on the show, I have to remember James. And when I'm introducing him to new people, I have to remember James. And I slip up. And then I've never said this to James before, but behind, like, when he's not necessarily around, people will come up to me and be like, you called him Jim and James? Like, which one should I call? I'm like, it's James. I screwed up. It's James.
James.
I met him as Jim, but it's James,
Yeah.
So at any rate, I wanted to just say that. I want to step back just a little bit. And I agree with everybody. We could probably talk for hours and hours and hours on this subject because, I mean, it's human behavior and understanding, again, ourselves. And as importantly, like the people that are around us. And I mean, having taken your core assessment, and again, just for our listeners, if you go to getbetterfasterpodcast.com, we'll have the links to take the free assessment, as well as, links to the book, links to coaching with Dr. Denim and his team. But I want to step back because we've thrown out some, it's not necessarily lingo. I don't want to say that we've thrown out some words that some people might think, I think I know what that is, but maybe they don't, or I've never heard of that before. So let's just talk about that. First of all, even before core, we start talking about attachment styles.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel, I mean, a lot because of you. I mean, we met at a mastermind in Boise with some incredible people at Titans of Industry. And, I was fascinated by, the talk that you gave, and I instantly came up to you and I'm like, we have to have you on the podcast right away. It only took how many, a year almost to get you on here. But nonetheless, and I want to give you the floor because you're the expert in this. And then I want to take it to core, but let's focus on attachment styles first, because I think that people have a little more exposure, not maybe a lot, but a little more exposure to that than the core temperament.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a new layer that people are either just learning about or maybe might not have heard of. So the 4 attachment styles, I'll just remind everybody, and then Dr. Denim, I'll have you wax poetic on it, are secure, anxious, avoidant, and I think disorganized, if I did that right. Can you just tell us a little bit, and none are necessarily better than the other. They're just different. Am I right on that or
no?
No. Okay. Some are horrible and some are perfect.
No. I really like to think in terms of like healthy and unhealthy.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah. Tell us about it. Like, tell us about these.
Because healthy doesn't change regardless of your core or your attachment style. We have tons of research. One of the cool things about the field of human development and family science is that it's just that it's science, and there are decades of research and so many things that feel like really squishy and kind of magical for people. There really is a lot of science that goes into it. We know what it takes to have a healthy life. We know what it takes to have a healthy relationship. It's not a mystery. It really is, it's they're research things. And when we live healthy, we get healthy results. Like healthy across time works.
Mm-hmm.
Not every time, but across time. And unhealthy does not work. And so a secure attachment style works much more effectively to bring about healthy relationships in our lives than does an anxious attachment style or a dismissive avoidant or a fearful avoidant. And that, fearful avoidant and disorganized are interchangeable. It's typically talked about more as a fearful avoidant. Attachment really sits on two axes, two variables. One is avoidance, and the other is anxiety, anxiousness, and avoidance. And so if you have somebody who is high anxiety and high avoidance, they have a fearful avoidant attachment style. If you have somebody that is high on anxiety and low on avoidance, that's an anxious or a preoccupied or an ambivalent. Three labels for the same attachment style. And then if you have somebody who is low on anxiety but high on avoidance, that's a dismissive avoidant attachment style. And then low on avoidance and low on anxiety is where secure lives. And let me just so that there's a system in the brain. It's called the attachment system. And that attachment system has a particular function and job. Just like, the fight, flight, freeze system in the brain that's controlled by the amygdala has a job. That the job of that system is to try to deal with threat, deal with danger, and to keep us safe. The job of the attachment system is twofold. The job of the attachment system is to take us from a disorganized state back to a reorganized state, because in order for us to be able to function well as humans, we have to be organized emotionally. Neurologically, we have to be in our frontal lobes. The neurological system has to be calmed down. And so when we become disorganized emotionally, the attachment system becomes the rule book that says this is how you go about getting reorganized emotionally. And then the other job of the attachment system is it's a rule book. It is a blueprint that gets wired during the first 3 years of life before we have any conscious memory. And it dictates how we monitor and manage closeness and connection. That's what the attachment system is. That's what the attachment system's job is.
That's super interesting. Yeah. I have some follow-up questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And I'll share a little bit and then I'll get to the questions.
Okay.
So, there's all these questionnaires, tests that you can take online.
Yeah.
And they come from different places. And I have taken, and Rachel has taken these tests over and over and over again from multiple sources. And I was going to say, I'm proud to say that's the wrong word. But I always 100% of the time come across as secure. I come out as a secure attachment. However, and Rachel too. However, I will say that maybe we're taking those tests at our best moments. You know what I mean? Maybe we're in a good space taking those tests.
Yeah.
But in our not best spaces, Rachel will tell you, and I'll admit it, that I have a tendency toward an anxious attachment style. I do. I do. And I know, I don't say I know where I get it, but my mother, to quote Richard Gere in Pretty Woman, 10 years and $10,000 in counseling later, I can tell you it was all my mother's fault. And I mean that out of love. And then Rachel, it's interesting, with her attachment style. In her not so best moments, she goes into an avoidant.
Right.
I don't know if it's an avoidant fearful or a avoidant dismissive, or
probably dismissive avoidant.
Yeah, but and so it's interesting because it's an interesting combo, right? Because
Yes.
The anxious style, as we know, once we got to work this out right now. We got to
Right.
talk. Oh my God, the
Yes.
world's falling apart if we don't work this out right now. And the avoidant person is, I'm just gonna go do my thing for a while, and I need space. It's like oil and water. Those two,
totally, and trigger each other,
and they trigger, and it's a feed forward cycle, right?
Yes.
Granted, we've done a lot of work. I mean, I don't want to say we've done the work. We're not done with it. I mean, it's
Doing,
yeah,
yeah,
we're doing the work. And I think that, having a open, transparent, honest, don't be mean, but don't hold back, like talk about what we need to talk about in real time. As opposed to like letting things build up and then like, well, 2 years ago,
right.
you always do this. I mean,
Yes.
so I think that fluidity of conversation really helps with this. And we've learned, I've learned, like you said, with our partners, what triggers Rachel. I don't want to do those things. And she's
Right.
learned what triggers me and she doesn't want to do those things. So, I mean, we've been together forever. So, I mean, we've kind of figured a lot of this out and it helps us to stay more in that secure attachment space.
Yeah.
Now, finally to my question. Obviously these are learned behaviors, right? I mean, these attachment styles, right? As we've discussed. Can they change? I mean, they're hardwired to a certain extent into us, neurosynaptically, by the time we're 3 to 5 years old. But will I ever, in my worst moments, will I grow out of my anxious attachment style? Will Rachel eventually grow out of her avoidant attachment style? Or is this just like, it's going to be lingering in the background and we're just going to have to deal with it? I'm curious.
Yeah. So two things there. One, attachment's on a continuum. So it's not just a category, right? It's and so you might be within the sphere of secure, trending toward anxious, and Rachel might be in the sphere of secure, trending toward dismissive avoidance. And so then when stressors increase and you get triggered, you get out of your upper brain, then some of the anxiety symptoms for you and some of the dismissive avoidance symptoms for her will get triggered. The good and the bad news about do you want me to stop, James?
No, okay. Keep going. I'm just signaling that I'm ready to jump in when you guys are ready.
The good and the bad news is that attachment style can absolutely be rewired. It is rewirable. It is a subjective blueprint or rule book that got wired into our brains during those first few years of life. The research shows that about 25% of people are able to change their attachment blueprint over a 4-year period when they're trying to do so.
Okay. I like that timeline. It's not 4 days, 4 weeks, 4 months. It's years.
It's not. And it's still, even when you're trying, it is a challenging thing to do. Why? Because it is some of your oldest and most like foundational neural pathways in your brain. And so they are there are a few different reasons why attachment style doesn't typically change. Most people never do change their attachment style, even though it is changeable. And there are some reasons why. One is because we don't ever remember not having that rule book. And so we don't really understand what secure looks like, what it looks like to actually believe that and count on the fact that you're going to be valued and matter in relationships, and the fact that you could actually trust that somebody's going to consistently be sensitive and available to you. Most of us can't even fathom that if your brain wasn't wired by that, like in that way. The second thing is that we interact in ways relationally that almost guarantees the response that we get from others. So if I have a dismissive avoidant rule book, then I build walls. I'm slow to let people in. I'm slow to warm up. I don't trust that I'm really going to be valued in a relationship. I don't believe that relationships are super safe places. And so the emotional one of the most predictable aspects of attachment style is the emotional reaction to closeness. And people with a dismissive avoidant rule book, their emotional reaction to closeness is to start to feel smothered. And this fear of being controlled, and you're going to want to tell me who to hang out with, and you're going to want to tell me how to spend my money, and you're going to want to have sex with me all the time, and you're going to want to tell me what to do with my buddies and where to work. So there's this fear of loss of autonomy that the avoidant brain has. And so their emotional reaction to closeness is to feel smothered, and then the brain starts looking for reasons and ways to create space. And so if you're if you show up in a relationship like that with walls and kind of aloofness, well, if you're somebody healthy trying to connect with somebody who's not willing to connect, then that doesn't feel very good. And if you're healthy, when you bump up against that, what are you going to do? Well, if you're healthy, you're going to invite that person to try to meet you in healthy. Hey, let me in. Hey, I don't want to control you. Hey, we've been together for 5 years. You can share your favorite color with me or whatever. You can invite the other person to be healthy. But if you keep getting met with a wall, then if you're healthy, you're going to leave. Sooner or later, you're going to leave. And when you do, the person with the avoidant brain is going to say, of course, everybody leaves me. Relationships can't be trusted. Well, why did they leave? They left. One, you don't know without really being able to explore it. But a healthy person would leave because of how you showed up, not because you're unlovable, not because relationships aren't safe, but so we have a tremendous ability to determine the kind of reactions we get from somebody by how we show up. And so we continue to reinforce our attachment styles by how we show up. The third reason is that we almost always choose people who give us exactly what we expect. And so avoidant people will frequently choose anxious people who are needy and engage in protest behaviors and are kind of smothering, which reinforces that the relationships are smothering. And so for those reasons, attachment style doesn't rewire easily, and most people don't do it, even though it is totally rewirable.
James, I want to pass it right over to you, but Dr. Denim, I have a question. Is there ever an age where it's too late to rewire, or could a 92-year-old rewire?
Absolutely. Okay. The cool thing about and that's again, so attachment style plus your core temperament equals your emotional blueprint. And one aspect of that is rewirable. The other aspect is not alterable. And when you understand how to work with both, you're able to understand your emotional blueprint and manage your life and relationships well.
I just have many more questions, but James, go ahead.
Well, it's like the old archetype that it's just how I am, deal with it.
Yeah.
And and there's parts of
which is not healthy.
No. And we're talking about nature versus nurture and rewiring. So that person that's 92 can become more adaptable by 96, which is pretty cool.
It is cool.
And as anybody knows me, as much as I love friends and relationships, I'm bold. Like I'm a grab the bull by the horns type of guy in GDS. I get shit done.
Yeah.
And that's the type of archetype personality that I am. Even though I know how to hold space for people, I'm like, this isn't moving fast enough, guys. We need to get action. People need to start, doing what's necessary of them. And we've had the conversation once. Let's not have it twice. And that's my my catalyst activating system inside of me.
Yeah.
And I guess my question for you, I have a twofold here. Can you look at people without them even talking and see these behaviors and traits in them?
Oh,
wow. I mean, you got to observe something, right? I mean, you can't just see absence of words or behavior and assess. But typically, I mean, I've been doing this long enough and I'm old enough that I typically don't have to spend too much time with somebody without being able to see some of these patterns pretty clearly.
Because I can pick up on character traits quite quickly.
Yeah.
Like, does this person keep clean shoes? Do they cut their fingernails? Do they groom themselves? Are they dressed smart? Are they dressed neat? Do they look like they just rolled out of bed? Do they take care of their hair? Do they take care of their surroundings?
You notice those details.
Oh yeah. Do they look like they just rolled around on a dog farm and walked out of the house with hair all over them? like how how neat is the person and their appearance. Really, to me, it tells a lot about their traits and their behaviors. Are they cutting their fingernails? They have dirt underneath their fingernails. As you get closer to them, does it look like they, maintain good bathing techniques and good bathing properties? Like, there's a lot of things that you can pick up on without them saying a damn word.
That's
And it's
true.
funny. It's
That's
funny to
very
you
true.
because you look at like what somebody's going to divulge to you. I look at how does somebody show up.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's a little bit difference in the breeding techniques that we follow.
I just looked at my fingernails, by the way. I'm like, are my
I
fingernails?
know. I'm like, James, how am I rating, buddy?
Well,
is my shirt okay?
and it's not from a place of judgment.
No, it's just
it's
observation, right?
it's
Yeah.
just my inborn innate intelligence that keys me into how I can best communicate with somebody and how I
Also,
can best.
totally ties into core, ties into temperament a lot.
Yeah. And I know that if I understand their outward appearance, I can best guide them. And I know the communication technique and the communication style that best fits that person based on how they show up to me.
Yeah.
So those are really, really important things I think that people have to understand is it's the micro expressions, it's the small habits, it's the micro habits that people have, whether they give a shit or they don't give a shit. I give a shit because I notice it.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between being locked in and aware of things and being oblivious and checked out. And I don't even have the ability to check out. I'm
No.
always so damn dialed in that I pick up everything on everybody at every time. And I probably shouldn't say that stuff because now everybody's gonna be like, damn, did I like, how's my breath around James? And did I like, did I like
No,
spill egg on my shirt today? And should I come and talk to him today? But it's not a judgment thing. It's just a recognition thing.
well, and that's actually super predictable by temperament. There are temperaments who do not do that, even if they try to. And there are
Yeah.
temperaments, two of the temperaments can't help but do what you're talking about. And two of them can't do it to save their lives, even if they're trying.
But the other side of that is most people don't do it gently. They do it as assholes and they do it out of judgment. And I do it out of recognition to see how I can best interact with this
Understanding.
person and
Yeah.
be a force of good in their life out of a healthy relationship rather than an unhealthy stance,
Yes.
which you
Yeah.
said earlier. I do want to get to one thing before I pass it to Jason is you talk about rewiring our brains from knowledge and behaviors. How do you go in and do this with the reticular activating system? Like, I know that's a core piece of what you do for people for
Yep.
the rewiring of 4-year
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
How do you dive into the reticular activating system and get the cadence to shift?
Yeah, great question. So the reticular activating system is the bridge between the subconscious and the conscious brain. And it's really it's where stimulus comes in, essentially sensory data, except for the olfactory data. The other sensory data comes into the reticular activating system, and it works like the gatekeeper. And our brains try really hard to prove us correct. That's what our brains try to do. And so if I think that people don't like me, the bouncer, I like to think of the reticular activating system as a bouncer, kind of deciding what data. Because if you look out, one of the things that I do with my clients, I just have them look out my windows, and I've actually got a view of Zion National Park out my window, and I've got trees and different things out here. And so I'll just say, look out my window and see what you see. And there are literally tens, if not hundreds of thousands of data points just outside my windows here. And at first glance, your reticular activating system will just decide what of those data points gets let through. And typically that happens subconsciously without us directing the process at all. But then I'll say, okay, I want you to pick out a particular branch. Can you pick out a particular branch? And yeah, of course they can. Okay, now I want you to pick out a particular leaf. Focus in on a particular leaf, which they can do when they try to do so. And that's, we have the ability to direct our reticular activating systems if we will direct them. We can choose who's on the VIP list of the bouncer that the bouncer lets to the top, to the front of the line and into the club. If we will do that. If we will not do that, our brains just try really their best to try to prove us correct. And so if you want to rewire your brain, and if you want to, and attachment system is no different than rewiring another core belief, then you can very specifically direct your brain to pick out the data that you want punctuated. I had a kid, a 15-year-old that I was working with a few months ago, who really felt like his friends didn't like him, didn't feel like his friends liked him, didn't feel like he was really that important to God either, which was important to him. And so the homework that I gave him was to set an alarm at two times during the day. And then when that alarm went off, to write down 3 data points that his friends liked him, and 3 evidences of God's involvement, God's hand in his life. Those were the things that were relevant to him. And then I had him text them to me. And so what are we doing there? What we're doing there is directing the reticular activating system. It's not about creating. I mean, I look out this window, there again, hundreds of thousands of data points. I don't have to create something that's not there. It's really about, what of all that data am I going to punctuate? And typically that happens without our direction, but we absolutely have the ability to direct it if we will.
I find that totally fascinating, Dr. Denim. And, this is kind of my interpretation, because you always hear, or we kind of this colloquial thing anyway, people only use 10% of their brain. Right. But the reality is we're using all of our brain. It's just that filtering system, that reticular activating system, is only allowing certain things to come to the forethought.
Right.
And then everything else is still working in the background and still having an effect. It's just really interesting. So thank you for that. The other thing I wanted to comment, and then I have a question. And I don't know exactly, I wish I would have, I was trying to write down what you said and I didn't quite get it. So this is not verbatim. That's paraphrase. But you said something like, unless we're directing it, it basically, the reticular activating system just kind of reinforces our belief system. You said it better than that. And I instantly thought that's a lot like ChatGPT, because people get into their GPT stations, right? And they're like, I knew I was right. GPT told me blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, it's just a mirror. GPT is just a mirror. It's predictive text. I mean, that's what it is. It's predictive text, and it's predicting the text that you want to hear that makes most sense to you. Totally. And I mean, and of course, like GPT and the RAS, I mean, you can talk to your GPT and have it, like, you can challenge it, and I mean, and have it challenge you. And I mean, you can do that stuff, but again, it's a conscious decision to have that, I don't know, discussion with the GPT, but with the RAS, I mean, it's the same idea that it becomes a mirror, it's a reflection of a reflection of a reflection, whatever that statement is. Yeah. But anyway, that's what jumped in my head. Yeah. I wanted to just say, because I want to get into core. I mean, I really do, because this temperament keeps coming up, and I know we've kind of dived in into the attachment styles. But my experience, I mean, James has his observations. My experience, because James, you were saying, can you just look at somebody or have a little bit of data points and, learn about them, and what can you tell? I am an armchair psychologist at best. I want to say this, I read a lot, not as much as DeMartini. I've read a whole lot, but this is my observation. Anxious people, or anxious tending people, I've observed, and I'm including myself, maybe this is my own self-reflection, tend to be external processors, tend to talk a lot, share a lot. And there's something there. And avoidant styles, in my experience, have been much more internal processors, in their head, figuring things out on their own, holding their cards. And I don't know, am I off on that? That's just been my experience. Am I noticing something, or is my RAS just reinforcing my belief system?
Yeah. So not necessarily. Can I outline the 4 types real quick?
Sure, please do.
Because that kind of helps to answer that. So C stands for comfort and connection, and C's are motivated by those 2 things. The primary emotional process that occurs in the C brain revolves around emotional settlement. C's want to get and stay settled emotionally. And when something happens that unsettles the C brain, it's like they're living in a sandstorm. It's like stepping into the shallows of a reservoir, and all of the sediment gets messed up.
Stirs up.
Stirs up. That's what the C brain feels like when they become unsettled emotionally. And the C brain wants to get that stuff settled back down, get the sandstorm settled. They want to get it settled, and they want it to stay settled. And that leads to their two core motivators of comfort and connection. C's like comfortable clothes, comfortable furniture, comfortable emotions. They want themselves and other people to be comfortable. That's their primary motivator. Their second one is connection. C's, more than any other temperament type, want deep, meaningful connection. They really want to feel gotten by the important people in their lives. They want to feel seen and understood, all of them. And with every temperament, there's a very different presentation between the healthy manifestation of it and the unhealthy manifestation of it. But C's are sensitive emotionally. They are in tune with the emotional environment, unlike anybody else. You know how some people can hear things that other people can't hear, or some people can smell things that other people can't smell. A C is like that emotionally. C's feel things that other people are completely unaware of. And so for a C, if a C goes into a crowd, it's like drinking out of an emotional fire hydrant. There's a lot of data coming at them. And so C's will typically kind of try to mitigate that. When they enter a crowd, they'll kind of step aside and try to kind of get the lay of the land, and then decide how best to kind of interface with it. It's really I'll just say this one little piece and then move on to the O, but one of the things that is really important in terms of a healthy C versus unhealthy C, healthy C's very proactively go about creating comfort and connection, and unhealthy C's become consumed with avoiding discomfort, and end up sacrificing connection, trying to avoid discomfort. And one of the primary processes that creates connection revolves around vulnerability and risk, right? Every single human has two primary emotional needs. The first one is a sense of worth. Every single one of us has an innate desire to feel valued by the important people in our lives. And our brains assess that need as, do I matter to the people that I'm supposed to matter to? Am I valued by them? And the second one is a sense of love and belonging. And our brains assess love and belonging as, am I emotionally safe with the people that I'm supposed to be safe with? Those two needs are unextinguishable. Is that a word? You can't turn them off. You cannot get rid of those needs. One of them sits on one shoulder, one of them sits on the other throughout our entire lives.
I think the word you're looking for is undeniable.
Undeniable. That's a good way to say it. Yeah. When those needs are being met, we don't tend to pay very much attention to them. When they're not being met, our brains will do something to try to get those needs met. And that emotional safety, that need is met. It's a relational component. It's not lack of risk. It's not, I'm not going to get hit by a car. It's, I'm safe with someone. That's what our brains are looking for. And that happens through risk. If I said, I don't know, I lost you for a second.
You're back now.
Okay.
If you said what?
If I said jump and I'll catch you, at what point would you feel safe with me? When would you feel safe?
After I've known you for a while, I guess, Yeah, no.
If I said jump and I'll catch you, you would not feel safe until you had jumped and I had caught you.
Okay, that's fair.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be when I say, hey, I've caught lots of people. I've got you. Don't worry about it. It wouldn't even be when you thought, I'm sure Denim can catch me. It wouldn't be until you had risked and I had caught you that you would actually feel safe. And that's the simple mechanism that creates intimacy and safety in a relationship. It's risk and having that risk responded well to. Okay. So that's the C. O.
Before you go to O,
Yeah.
I'm just curious. After being on a screen with Jason and I for the past hour and 20 minutes, how do you identify Jason and I in these archetype categories?
Well, I have the
I
benefit
spilled
of,
my beans earlier, but
well,
I
and
mean,
I
yeah,
have the advantage of having interacted with Jason a little bit. Jason's definitely a primary E.
we're gonna
And,
get there.
yeah, and
It's the best one
I'm
to be.
guessing, huh? What'd you
It's the
say?
best one to be. I'm just kidding.
Spoiler. Spoiler, E's think that it's the best. And I think you have a lot of C in you, James. I'm not sure where it fits, but just in listening to you and the way that you're talking and the way that you feel, I would be shocked if you don't have a fair amount of C in you.
Well, the reason I asked you that is because I'm excited for when we get to the wrap of the show for people to go do the assessment
Yeah.
at getbetterfasterpodcast.com. Go and check out. I'll do that in the recap too. I'll tell people where to go and do the core assessments. But I was just trying to pre-frame the close of today's show
Yeah.
with a quick like a synopsis of who is Jason, who is James, and then how can people find out who they are
Yeah.
on the process, on this continuum process too.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
on to O. On to
Okay. O stands for optimism. And O's are the idealists among us. O's O's primary motivator is pleasant, positive emotion. O's are motivated by having fun. They are the only temperament that lives in the present. And it is really important that the present moment be enjoyable to them. O's are the most people oriented of any of the temperaments. They bring very kind of positive, buoyant, optimistic kind of energy. O's love the process of wrapping their brains around things. They love figuring things out. That's the exciting part for the O. That's the enjoyable part for the O. O's, because of their primary motivator for pleasant and positive emotion, O's also they have a very predictable low tolerance for negative emotion, a low tolerance for conflict and resistance and hassle. Why? Because those things aren't fun. O's are I lost my train of thought. What I was going to say. O's tend to get bored with things after they wrap their brain around an idea. Then they tend to lose interest in it. Because then comes all the minutia, all the details of how to do something. And so it's not at all uncommon for an O to have a whole stack of half-read books or half-completed projects because they love the idea of figuring it out, and then they tend to lose interest in it. O's have FOMO. They have a difficult time planning because they don't know how they're going to feel when the time comes. And so, what do you want to do for summer vacation? Or what do you want to do this weekend? Those are difficult questions for the O brain because they are motivated by pleasant, fun, positive emotion, and because they live in the present. And so they don't know how they're going to feel this weekend. What do you want for dinner tonight? Well, I don't know. I'm not sure how I'm going to feel later. Right now, nothing really sounds good to me. And so managing this kind of the where in time they live becomes a really important thing. Almost all of the predictable challenges around O-ness deal with avoiding unpleasant tasks, avoiding conflict, avoiding. They have a hard time following through. O's are really good at like creating beginning movement. They're great cheerleaders. They're great at like rallying the troops. They have a difficult time maintaining movement. That's kind of the 411 on the O. R stands for resolution. And R's are the doers among us. R's are really good at getting crap done. R's are the only temperament that lives in the future. The R brain is constantly thinking about what's coming next. R's are intense emotionally. R's are the most external processors of anybody. almost everything that comes in the R brain comes out of the R mouth, which relationally is really nice, because one of the things that builds trust in a relationship is knowing where somebody stands. Transparency, openness, and vulnerability leads to trust. And with an R, you hardly ever have to wonder about what they're thinking or what's going on under the hood, because almost everything happens externally. R's are really good at busting through resistance and obstacles. They get so focused on where they're going that everything between here and there kind of blurs into the background. And the R brain is really good at blowing through obstacles between here and there. Sometimes that can be you. Sometimes people feel run over by R's because they're just doing their thing. One of the most important things and challenging aspects of managing R-ness in a healthy way revolves around what and when has the ability to get on their radar. Because whatever is on the radar screen of the R takes up the entire screen. Everything else fades into the background, and they are motivated to get it done. They love checking things off. They love moving things forward. They typically have several things moving forward at once. The R brain is like spinning, like an engine spinning at 7,000 RPMs. They're super intense. You can't maintain that intensity on something that's not moving very long without coming undone. And so if an R can't create movement on what it's working on, the R brain likes to jump to something that it can create movement on. Relationally, managing other people's ability to get on the radar screen of the R is really important, because if an R is doing something, it doesn't matter if they're on their phone or whatever, nothing else exists. And so a lot of times, if you're a kid trying to get on the radar screen of an R parent, it's like, hey, mom, or dad. And they're not even hearing you until like the 37th time. And then it's like, what do you want? What do you need? Because by the time that it finally gets on the screen, it typically, the R has elevated in terms of their intensity. So managing what and when has the ability to get on the screen is really important. Jason.
Yeah, I might have missed this. I've been keeping notes because I like we're talking to, the guru here, and I appreciate it. The primary motivator, you talked about the primary motivators for, I'll just do a quick recap. With C's, the primary motivators are, emotional settlement, staying in emotional resolution, comfort and connection, those things. With the O, it was a pleasant primary emotion, and I think that you said, I thought this was really interesting. There's a number of interesting things, but living in the moment, present moment needs to be enjoyable and all that. What's the primary motivator for R's?
Getting things done, resolution.
Things done. Okay.
The primary process, the emotional process for the R brain, is when something undone comes to their attention, it bugs them. It creates emotional strain. It doesn't matter if it's lost keys, a lost TV remote, their kid hasn't turned in a project. When something undone gets on the screen, it bugs the R brain. And that is what the R is driven to resolve. An R, it's not like, oh, I'm working on painting this wall and I paint it and I step back and say, oh, look how nice this is. And look at how perfectly no, it was bugging me that it wasn't done. And now it's not bugging me because it's done.
I think it's interesting because, as I mentioned early in the show, and we'll, psychoanalyze this all day if we want, but I'm a primary E. We haven't gotten there yet, but I'm a secondary R. I'm an E 42%, but I'm an R, which again stands for resolution, 33%. And it's interesting because you didn't say this, but you said on the radar. My family knows, like they literally know these words. I'll be working, and James has seen it too. I'll be working and I call it in my zone. Where I'm oblivious. Like people are talking to me. I don't even hear them.
Like Charlie Brown.
Like I am like it's tunnel vision. I get really into what I'm doing. And I want also, why do I do that? Because I want to get it done. I don't want to be distracted from my zone, because it's just going to prolong me of having to go into that zone and getting things done. And it's and I mean, this is wild because this.
Almost, can I say one quick thing?
Please do, yeah.
Almost all of the frustrations for ours revolve around obstacles to resolution.
Yes.
Ours hate hassle. They don't like things that slow them down or impede their ability to resolve things are really challenging and frustrating for the R brain. I also want to make one quick comment on your ER combination to point out a couple of things. One, that's such a great combination, Jason. You actually get a double dose of tunnel vision with ENR, which we'll talk about in just a second.
Great.
But ease, an ER gets a lot done and they do it well. Well, where Rness isn't interested necessarily in quality. It's about getting it done. So every corner might not be square, every T might not be crossed, every I might not be dotted, because that's not the motive. The motive is to get it done. E's motive, which we'll talk about in a second, is to do it the right way. And so that ER primary secondary leads you to do a lot and to do it well. Where if you were since we're talking about R, if you were an RO, that wouldn't be the same thing, or an RC, that wouldn't be the same thing. But that RE combination gets a lot done and does it well.
That's super interesting because I do feel that like that hits home to me. I literally feel like I want to get things done, but I want to do it the right way.
Yes.
My family hears that from me as well. Like, let's not cut corners. Let's not shorthand it. Let's just do it right once. You know, James is like, say something once, why say it again? I'm kind of like, do something once, why do it again? Like, let's just do it right the first time, even if it takes a little bit longer. Let's do it right so we never have to, deal with it again. Or if we do, we'll have a systems or operation around it so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time, And it's super interesting that way. I've even had to, I don't know if I'm going to get this right, but there's a book I believe called the 80-20 principle by, I don't know if it's Cook. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Cook. But basically is the gist of the book, I'll save everybody. Please go get the book. But the gist of it is 80% is good enough. Like sometimes things are good enough. And I have to remind myself that good enough is better than perfect. I literally have to tell
which is a good hack for the e-brain.
Yeah, I have to because otherwise I'll get lost in perfectionism. The last thing, and James, I see you are coming right up. The last thing about myself, and thank you listeners for letting me be psychoanalyzed, I appreciate it, is that sometimes, Dr. Denim, I know something's important and I got to get it done. I have this R resolution, but I know what it's going to take to get it done right and well, that I won't even start that project until I know I have the mental space, the time space to address that project. And sometimes it's as simple as, and this is where it gets super weird, like a friend will text me and I want to respond deeply. And like, I want to give them like, I know you need this, and I'm like, well, I'll get to that.
I don't have the bandwidth right now, or the
I don't
time
have the bandwidth right now. Either time or mental space. I don't have the bandwidth right now. And sometimes, unfortunately, that can be, and James has experienced this, a day might go by or two. I would never, if something was urgent, I would get something out. But I'm talking about the more philosophical connections that we have with our deep friends and all that. Like it'll take me a hot minute sometimes to respond. And it's not because I don't care. It's because I try to tell my friends, and they know this about me, I care so deeply about you that I had to find the bandwidth to give you what you needed at the time.
I want to comment on so many things right there, but I'll wait.
I'll pass it over to James and then we'll get back. Yeah.
Well, I know that we're going to get onto the E of the core here shortly. And Jason, I think those are the attributes what make us work really well together, is because, if you need to get like the ball across the line, we're going to get it done.
Absolutely.
If you need to have a catalyst activator, you're going to say, hey, James, we need to get this thing moving in this direction. And I have no hesitations. I think that that's a good part of us, is you want to get it done right. I want to get it done fast.
Yeah.
And I think that those two character traits line up really well with each other. And we have good management sources around us of people that we have accountability towards. And I think when we have accountability towards other people and we both have like a primary objective, like there's nothing going to get in our way. So I think it's really cool to hear what you're saying about yourself, in the tunnel vision aspect. I was just curious for both of you. Have you guys heard of the Perdomo technique?
PRO, like pro domo, PRODO.
I'm not sure how to spell it,
Okay.
but it's Italian. Perdomo is tomato, and it's a little timer that you can get, and you set it for like I think either 15 or
Pomodoro.
Oh, the
Pomodoro.
Pomodoro.
yeah, the 25-5.
Yeah, and you set these like incremental like
Yeah,
time zones of blocks that nothing gets in your like
yeah,
in your way. Maybe I mispronounced it, but I think that is basically what Jason's saying, that his method is he basically sets that 25-minute alarm and goes in on a project, and it doesn't matter if the tornado's coming through North Liberty. It's going to come and go, and Jason's still going to keep his head down and get the project done.
Dude,
So
that's how I got my thesis done for my master's degree.
Right.
I literally, and James has heard this story, but I literally left town, went to another city, booked myself in a hotel room, closed off all communication, and I literally did not leave that hotel room until that thesis was finally finished, final version. And that's the way I got it done, because that's what I needed to do to go into my zone. Like yeah, this is my bizarre technique. Everybody now knows I will GSD. I'll get shit done. I'll get it done as quickly as I can.
You just can't have distractions. You can't.
Yeah, I can't have this. Yeah, I don't like distractions. Yeah, I just don't
like. So put the cell phone on silent, put it in a drawer, and let you just get to business.
Yes.
So that's called the Pomodoro approach, and that's a really good technique to do that. I want to point out one more thing, and then jump into the E, if that's okay.
Yes.
So one of the ways that you know what your primary type is, for those of you that are listening that are like, oh, I want that kind of resonates and that kind of resonates, how you know what your primary versus secondary type is when the two primary motivators come into conflict with each other. Most of the time your primary temperament type will win. So Jason, for you and the ER, if you have to choose between doing something right or just getting it done, if you're a primary E, most of the time doing it right will win.
Yep.
If you're a primary R, most of the time your brain would cut corners and sacrifice the rightness in your mind to get it done. And you can see those patterns. That's, again, not every time, but most of the time your primary type will win.
I find that I mean, you're totally right. I mean, you're 100% right about me. I want to get into the E's, but I also just want to say this, that I relate to what you're saying, but I also, people are like, I resemble that remark. No, I really do. Like, I really resemble a primary E with a secondary R.
Yeah.
That is me. And what's really funny, looking at I don't know if you call it an archetype or core type or whatever that is. Yeah. And please, everyone listening, if you want to know what your primary and secondaries and tertiaries and quaternary are, just go take the test. It's free. It's at getbetterfaster.com. We'll have the links in there. Read Dr. Denim's book. And if you're so moved, and I think people should be, consider working with his team. I mean, you can really dive deeply into this and understand yourself and others around you. All of that said, when I look at mine, again, I'll say 42% E exactness, 33% resolution. So get it done right. But get it done. Check this out. Comfort and connection is only 15%. And optimism is only 9%.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm just going to get shit done and I'm going to do it right. And that's my entire being.
Right. Yes.
Probably if I really examine it, and I mean this out of love. I mean, I don't want to judge myself on this. It's not a judgment statement, but probably to a certain extent at the expense of comfort and connection, at the expense of the present moment. Like it's a long-term plan. Like, I'd rather do it right now to have a better future. I'm willing to do things today the right way and take the time to do it so that in the future, life is better for myself and for others around me. And I can see that, that could be conflicting with people that have, connections and community and comfort and, present time optimism and all of that. I can see that. And I've probably, and I've had so many great people in my life. But I probably lost some people because of that. I mean, closeness. I mean,
Oh,
I
and
probably
yes,
have. I'm
yes,
sure I have.
totally. And that's okay, because you're getting at some of the most important reasons to understand temperament and the relational components of it. Because again, this does not change. If Rachel is a C, she's always going to be a C.
Yeah.
And if you're an E, you're always going to be an E. And parenting. So we have 5 kids, and have a primary type of each of the kids, and then secondary type. But our youngest kid, Eric, is a C. He's the only C that we have. And parenting a C is very different than parenting an E or an R or an O. And parenting well is very different. And your well, maybe I'll jump into the E and
Yeah, let's do it.
then come
Yeah.
back. But
Yeah, we are coming up at the edge of our time together. I know
Okay.
there's a lot of topics to discuss,
Okay.
but let's
Yeah.
wrap up with E, because
Okay.
I do have some closing remarks and just a really couple interesting tie-ins, because I think that we really need to round out the whole topic of the core assessment to where people that are curious about it have a full understanding. And then I'm sure that, like Jason said, or I said earlier, we're not going to have enough time to get to all the things we really want to talk about today. So we're going to tee up a version 2 of this conversation.
We barely had enough time to go over attachment styles, and just what the 4 are.
We haven't even touched on attachment style yet.
We got so much to do. Like this, we're gonna have there's gonna be like part 10 of Dr. Denim. I'm telling you, this is, guys. But for our listeners, this is what makes us all tick. Like, this is the undercurrent of why we are the way we are, and what can change, and as importantly, what can't really change.
Yep.
And knowing that is so empowering. I mean, Rachel and I knowing these things about ourselves has helped us as human beings individually, but also with each other in our relationship. And honestly, Dr. Denim, when we again heard you speak on stage for the first time, I was like, that guy gets it. That guy knows something that I don't know, and I now need to know what that guy knows. So anyway, back to E's. Let's talk about exactness.
Yes. So E stands for exactness and excellence.
Ooh, okay.
And E's are they're the perfecters. That's what I call them, the perfecters among us. E's are motivated by improving things. And in fact, Jason said it could have been a quote in my book, frankly, because the primary process that the E-brain does is to look at what has happened to see how to make it better for the next time.
Yes.
That's what the E does. And it does not matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's how to load the dishwasher, how to clean the toilet, how to do a surgery, how to get better faster, it does not matter what it is. When the E brain is working, it's trying to figure out how to make something better. E's live in the past because of that, because they look at what has been to analyze it. So that the process for the E brain is to plan, prepare, practice, and analyze. Plan, prepare, practice, and analyze. That's what the E brain naturally does. I have yet to hear any E say something was perfect. There's always something that would make it better. And so E's live in the past. E's are the most internal of any of the temperament types. When an E gets disorganized emotionally, they tend to go inside and get reorganized and then come back out. Relationally, there's an important little caveat here, because E's don't necessarily feel a real reason to externally process. But in any relationship, you have 3 entities. You have each person and you have the relationship. And all 3 of those entities need to be healthy. And a relationship will never be healthier than the 2 people that make it up. So that's really important to understand. And so an E needs to remind themselves that even if they don't feel like they need to externally process, the relationship needs you to externally process. E's think through things very thoroughly, and they settle on the best way. They're trying to figure out the correct process. They want to figure out the best process, and then they want to be able to replicate it over and over and over again. That's the quest. I had a client who got into making vanilla, and she researched deep, like vanilla beans from different countries and how that affects things. And it doesn't matter what the E brain is doing, it's trying to figure out the best way. Because they think through things so thoroughly, E's have a very high level of confidence in the conclusions that they draw. And if you disagree with an E, their default is to think that you're wrong. And it's not that they don't think, oh, you're stupid or I'm smarter than you. The thought process is usually like, well, if you knew what I knew, or if you had the data that I have, you would also land on this obviously correct conclusion. And relationally, it's also important to note that there's a big difference between something could be better and it's not good enough. Big difference there. And you need to make sure that you communicate as an E that it's about improvement and not about not being good enough. An E gets stuck in two very predictable places. An E, and Jason mentioned this as well, an E will stall movement starting something. They think through the best way to do something, like what the ideal is. And if they don't feel like they have the resources to do it the right way, time, energy, money, whatever, they will wait until E-ness. Now your R-ness probably compensates for some of that, Dr. Jason, but E-ness will sit there at that crossroads, sometimes for years, waiting to be able to do something the right way. Predictable challenge for the E brain. Yeah.
You nailed it.
The other place where an E will get stuck or stall movement is staying in something for too long. One of the E's greatest strengths is tenacity. E's have tremendous perseverance. They are able to grind, swim upstream, cut cross grain. They have tremendous tenacity. And it's really hard. They're like a dog on the bone. It's really hard for the E to stop something that they've started because they just can see how it should work. And so the E will get this ideal, and then they just keep trying to shove reality into that ideal. And they have a tremendous fortitude to doing that. Sometimes if you're that reality that they're trying to shove into the mold, that can be really uncomfortable. But those are two places where the E predictably gets stuck. E's have tremendous loyalty. They don't let very many people in because an E's thoughts are almost sacred to them. Where a C is really motivated by feeling, an E is motivated by logic. And if you ask an E a question, they kind of do this quick internal assessment of like, how badly do you really want to know? Because if an E is going to answer you, they're going to give, kind of back to what you said, James, earlier, they're going to give you the full architecture. They're going to build the argument and build the house and lead you to the conclusion that they land on. And so if you're just saying, hey, what do you think about that? If an E doesn't think that you're really interested, they're not going to take the time to lay out their sacred thoughts to you.
I call that people are on a need to know basis.
Yeah.
I mean, and I used to really share a whole lot, and then I realized not everybody needs to know everything, and it's not like I'm being mean about that. It's just, I think, Dr. Denim, you just nailed, I mean, geez, you're like so deep in my head right now. The other thing I wanted to say is I wrote E's have a tendency, maybe stay in things very long, tremendous tenacity. It's hard to stop something they've started. And this is what I wrote, because we can see how it can work if only people would get on board with my correct way of doing it.
Right. Beautiful. So, yeah. Can I have that quote?
Yeah. And then my R part of me is just, I just want to resolve it and have people get on board, So I mean, it's
just don't make this more difficult than it has to be.
Right.
I can tell these things like consistently in his communication techniques with everybody around him.
I'll bet you can totally see that.
And I'm just like, all right, bro. Do you realize I'm out hiking right now? And like, I'm on my way to the airport, and I'm actually on a flight right now. And I know that you have like these like demands and these like ideas that need to fit me into it. But you're not always there doing the same things as you want from me. So let's just pump the brakes. Know that, give it a day and let the paint dry. The artwork's going to look great. Okay.
Right. And totally.
And that's the archetype of working with a guy like me, is I'm like always on the go. and I'm always working on 5 to 10 things at the same time. So when somebody comes at me when they're available, when I was at them when they weren't
When you
available,
were,
now they
yeah,
are
when you were
available.
ready.
And now I'm like, all right, you missed your window of opportunity when I was ready to like hammer this thing out.
It's
And now
not on the
you're at
radar.
me. And now you're at me when you have the
I feel
time
like we're in
and
couples counseling right now.
and now you're at me when you have the bandwidth to get it done, and I'm checked out because I'm out having dinner. And
Something else
I've
is on
learned,
your radar.
but I've learned in our couples counseling session here that, you know, and James knows this, that I'll take his call when it comes in because that's what works for James. And I know that I can turn that ER on, like, and, you know, I'd rather take 5-10 minutes if that's what we have when James is available, you know,
And you
rather
let it on
than,
your screen.
and I let it on my screen, even though my bandwidth might not be perfect at that moment. I've somehow adapted, and I don't know how this works, but I've somehow adapted. I can let James on my radar. I can do that right now, you know, and
Cool.
I think it works well. I think we're good. I
Well,
think
and
we're good.
knowing what he needs enables you to do that. And I want to just make 2 points really quickly that we've kind of danced around, but I want to overtly state. Um, every temperament brings really important things to humanity, and society and humanity would be in big trouble without the unique contributions that each of these temperaments make. And you're not a good fit for everyone. There are very predictable challenges that come, very predictable strengths that come with an E, especially an ER, and very predictable challenges. And part of doing relationships, whether it's dating or marriage or a business partnership, is assessing and filtering. And you're not your particular bag of pros and cons isn't going to be a good fit for everybody, and somebody else's pros and cons isn't going to be a good fit for you. And the cool thing about understanding that is, instead of trying to massage unchangeable parts of somebody into something that you wish they were, when you understand temperament, you can, in fact, both, I have two of my daughters are married, and with both of them, when they were dating and getting serious with the boys that are now their husbands, um, we went through this process. So the initial assessment is like, is there any, are there any deal breakers here? And different people have different deal breakers, but are there any deal breakers here? And then once you pass that test, then it's about fit. And we had a lot. My oldest daughter is an EO, and she married a CE. And we had a lot of talks about, okay, these are the things about Dallin that are going to be, you're going to love and are going to be really great fits for you. And these are the things about Dallin that are going to drive you bonkers for the rest of your time with him. Mm. And these are the things about you, Rachel, that are going to be really, that Dallin's just going to eat up. And these are the things about you that are going to be really challenging for Dallin. And then you get to choose, do I want this bag of pros and cons or not? Because you choose somebody else, you're going to very predictably get a different bag of pros and cons. And when you understand both attachment style and temperament, attachment plus core, you're able to decode yours and somebody else's emotional blueprint.
Wow. Honestly, we could keep going, guys. And I actually, we're actually over a little bit right now. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pass it over to James. But I just want to say this was fascinating. In fact, in the green room, or I'm sorry, in our back room communication, I'm going to read you what I just texted James and Rachel. I literally said, and I'm quoting, and James will say this: "This shit is fascinating." Like, I mean, that's my exact quote right now. I mean, I just want to keep going. But we're going to have to push pause and bring you back on for part 2, part 3, part 10, like I said, until we get to the bottom of this. But, you know, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. Even though I've read your work and I've followed you, I feel like I understand it even more now. So thank you so much. And I hope that our listeners, our Get Better Faster Nation, you know, really is, if they're aware of what we're talking about, explore it further. If they're unaware, go explore it for initially. I mean, it's going to change your life forever. It'll change your life, your relationships, your work, everything. James, I want to pass it right over to you for final comments and all of that kind of stuff. But Dr. Denim, thank you again. I appreciate you and love you so much.
Thank you.
Man.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you know, as I've been on screen today and gotten to know you today, Dr. Denim, Cool thing is, I know that you're in driving distance to me, so there could be a chance that I could come
Yeah,
and see
come on
you
over.
and go do one of those Zion hikes with you,
Yeah, let's do it.
and we could look at the picture and look out the window, and
Yes,
I could pick out
do
the
some work
part,
with your RAS.
and I could look at the tree and pick out the leaf, and we could do the whole 9 yards. Sounds like a fun time. But today it's been absolutely transformational. I know that anybody that's watching and that will watch this evergreen episode is going to be definitely plugged into the core advantage. For our listeners, if you've ever felt broken, if you've ever wondered why you can't just be different, today you learned the real truth that you're not broken, that those pieces of you will just always be you. Um, you've just never been taught how to work with who you really are at actually your core. And go to getbetterfasterpodcast.com and take Dr. Slade's free core advantage assessment, which I think a lot of people are going to be really interested in doing. And then follow the link and grab Dr. Slade's book, Unlock Your Core Potential, on Amazon, that we didn't even get a chance to talk about. And if you're ready to stop fighting yourself and start building a life and relationships that actually work, check out the link to the Happy Healthy Coaching Program that he was talking about, how his daughters found partners and learned how to understand each other's ways of interacting with each other better, to better appreciate the things that the person brought and accepting them for the things that they don't get a change about them. And remember, nobody's coming to save you, but understanding your core proves you can save yourself. Dr. Slade, thank you once again. And to you all, our Get Better Faster Nation, thank you for listening and your continued support. You know, the best way to show your support is, like I always say, share this episode with somebody who needs to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode and get all the behind the scenes fun we've got coming your way. We've got more incredible guests lined up who are going to blow your mind, just like this episode did. With real solutions for reclaiming your health, your happiness, and your life. Until next time, keep questioning everything and keep getting better faster. Dr. Slade, it was a real pleasure to have you on today. Dr. Jason, you knocked it out of the park. You ER, and really excited for the next episode to have you on, Dr. Slade. So thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Denim. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thanks.
Love you all.
Yeah, good to see
Bye
you
for
guys.
now.
Okay.